MBA with the support of Schema Venture in 2020. And, after 12 years as a senior project manager at NG, Energy International Company, I decided to grasp deeply the understanding of core business functions in the fast-moving, complex, and certain business environment, and have to identify for business opportunities and challenges. And thanks to this program with Schema Business School, I could really realize my dream.
Thank you so much for that, Olga. And I think it's a very pertinent introduction to because you represent the public that we are speaking to. And this is why I'm delighted to have you here, because you went through the experience of this executive MBA, also with 3 young children in tow and a job. And you showed that this kind of thing is possible, and that it really can be that starting point for a career transition or a completely new start or an upward movement that so many professional women are looking for. So we're going to talk a little bit about the program and also some of Olga's insights and experiences, but also her recommendations to people who might be considering this kind of program. And if anybody who's listening has questions, please put them in the chat, and we will leave a few minutes at the end so that we can answer them for you. So thank you very much. I'm going to put on a PowerPoint so that we can, show you a bit more information about the program. So here we go. Up. So we really do want to talk about some of the insights, reflections, and recommendations that both Olga and I have had in taking, or in either being a woman who runs through this program, or or being the program director who supports women going through this program. So we have, in our case, it is an executive MBA. So it is a program for people who do have work experience already and who feel, and this is the case for many of our women applicants, that they've hit a ceiling somewhere and they would like to move up further, but they need some of those experiences and knowledge that they lack from their first years in the professional world. So our program as an executive MBA is part-time, because most of our most of our participants, men and women, work, and it is over a 2-year period. And as you can see from this slide, we do cover all the things that that are necessary. And as Olga said in her introduction, she came to get a better understanding of all the core business functions. I think what was an added bonus for Olga, I don't know if you would say that, with some of the other bullet points on this slide, the fact that it addressed more than just those core business functions. What are your thoughts on some of those? I mean, you set up a business as a result of doing this program, Olga.
So, with my experience at NG, I already worked like a project manager. I had really a good understanding of business, or have to manage the project from A to Z. But at the same time, when I had this idea to work more on business development, and it was really the start point to join Global Executive MBA, it's really have to develop in business in certain and fast changing business environment. And when you look for this, how you can improve this knowledge, different understanding, how you can complete and to get a different puzzle and to create a big picture to be very efficient and successful. It's for me, it was at the same time, how can I combine my professional life, my family life, and courses. And it's really one of the most important points for me. It was flexibility. I was looking for the program enable me to get flexibility and to combine courses, to combine my private life with three little kids and so on. But you need only some types of organization and delegate and integrate your family members.
Exactly. And I think we'll talk a little bit about how the program actually works on a week by week basis. But exactly. So I think for many women in particular, that balance of family, profession, and a degree is really important. And you know, and at Skimmer, we're the first to acknowledge this. So one of the things that we found is Olga and I, Olga, we talked a lot about some of the things that we wanted to share with you today about the outcomes of this program for you before we go into the organization. And we spent a lot of time talking about this, and we came up with sort of three core areas. And as we discussed, we realized that it was very much a laboratory at very different levels. And so in terms of that first laboratory, Olga, here was some of your feedback. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Oh, with pleasure. Thank you, Anki. So really, I really appreciated the program of Global Executive MBA with Schema Business School. It was like on the one side flexibility, on the second side it was really this blended program combining online courses with residential weeks. All this enable us to get a very good academic knowledge with different innovative methodologies coming from Harvard Business Schools, for example. Different tools have to identify opportunities and have to bring solutions. For example, Pestele tools or SWOT analysis. So at the same time, we really learn a lot about corporate culture and how this can impact on management style. Different study cases from multidisciplinary areas and industries. This is really a strong point when you can blend this academic knowledge and you can immediately implement them in real time with residential weeks. In addition to that, all time we travel, we take into account cultural aspects, different cross-cultural values, and this is very necessary when you work on a project with team from and people from different countries. It's really very useful and valuable to manage successfully project. And really I appreciated when we could apply our knowledge from different courses like marketing, management, strategy, about dynamic organizations, etc., etc. And we could have exchange one-to-one with highly skilled professors, with professional businessmen or businesswomen, with classmates from different industries, with from different countries. And this was one of the most valuable pillar of this program, when we could apply knowledge immediately in practice and test our experience as our expertise, our leadership skills, our communication, organization, and resourcefulness as well, to be agile and to adapt to the context.
Absolutely. And I think, so Olga, you've mentioned many aspects that we haven't even talked about. So just in terms of the actual learning, I think you're right. There was a lot of the learning of different topics. You mentioned marketing. There is also business strategy, organizational behavior. And you did learn all of that in a kind of laboratory type form. Some of it you learned in online courses, and I will talk a little bit about how the program is designed to make it manageable for people to do. because people didn't meet all the time, and you learned it in a very global context because we had students from all over the world. So for those of you who may not know, Olga is from Ukraine, but she lives in France, and she's in a program where in this particular cohort, we have 32 students from 22 different nationalities. And so across these three growth labs, what we notice is that students learn so much about each other's values, behaviors, attitudes, and approaches, that becomes a it's a really dynamic mix, and
Is it?
it is, isn't it, Olga? Yeah, I mean, you know, you be working on projects with people from Lebanon, from France, from China, from all over the world, and
From Kazakhstan, Australia,
yeah,
US,
exactly.
London. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it in a way, quite playfully, not only through classes, but also by working together on case studies and on the residential weeks, which I'll say more about in a minute, around our schema campuses around the world. You all learn to actually you did that personal development partly in class, but you also did it very much playfully with amongst each other. Um, and this is part of that leadership development, that as you understand yourself a bit better, you also, and you understand others a bit better, you develop some really interesting and necessary skills in terms of how to communicate, how to negotiate with others, how to be flexible, but also to respond to others' needs and get them to respond to your own. So it was a learning curve on many, many different levels. And from the program director perspective, I have to say it's an incredibly dynamic program that is brought together, and in which we do many different things at different levels and in different places. So in order to say a little bit more about that, here is a bit of a rundown as to how we do the program. And you will see on this slide one of Olga's classmates, Nathalie Taquet, who had a complete life change, not only in terms of career, but also in terms of where she lives and where she does her work, between when she came into the program and when she left. Nathalie joined us as a scientist who'd been working in France, and and halfway through the program, Nathalie decided that she and her whole family would move to Australia. And this is where she is now. She did half of the program from Australia, and she has now set up her own wine business in Australia. And so she has changed her life and her work completely. And she is always smiling like this still. So the reason that this has worked so well for people like Nathalie, for Olga, and for many of the other women that we've had in the program and do now over the years, is that our approach is one that is blended. So our program is not just a face-to-face program where people come to a classroom every week or every 2 weeks, or once a month for a whole weekend. We've designed it slightly differently. Students come together face to face, but not all the time. So we have, and we started doing this when we first launched the program in 2014, that we realized that professional obligation and personal obligations, in addition to academic obligations, meant that we needed to be quite flexible. And this program is, we've been told over and again, it's very well adapted to professional women who, like Olga, also have children to look after, in that a lot of our classes are online, but face-to-face online, if you like. So that we do have classes, during the week, and they are always between 1300 and 1500 Central European time, because one of the other beauties of this program is that it is dynamically international, and in certain rankings we have come first place because of the international composition of our program. So we run classes in the middle of the day from a French perspective or a Central European perspective, because that way we can get in people who live in North America, for example, who will just have woken up, and people as far east as China who will not yet have gone to bed, and everything in between. So we do those. And then in addition to those, all the professors provide readings, other videos to watch, etc. So additional learning and work to be done in small groups between class sessions. Okay. And then we do have face-to-face encounters, which are 4 residential weeks that we hold throughout the lifetime of the program, and they occur approximately every 4 to 5 months in a 20-month program on one of our campuses. And Schema has campuses in France, but also in the United States, China, and Brazil. So these are the times when people come together for very intense face-to-face sessions, and where they meet. And Olga, maybe you could say a little bit about how this learning organization worked for you.
Thank you, Anke. For me, it was really very, very suitable program with my kids and with my job. I could really combine residential weeks with job and learning online with one-to-one exchange were really very, very valuable for me. At the same time, we can really learn from other people, from other classes, because they come from different countries, from different corporate culture, and from different industry.
Yes.
This is create like a point of exchange to compare different industry. When I come from energy, it was really interesting to compare with industry, telecom, or with digital. And all time when we learn, it's a strong point on globalization, innovation, on digital transformation. So it's really this course. When we have one part online, this help you to prepare and to work by yourself at home, to organize easily with your job and family. When you come for residential weeks, this is, yes, a small organization with job, and just you invite your family to help you. But residential weeks, it's like a point to implement and to practice your academic part in real time. And
exactly.
we have a lot of team project during the residential week. This is moment to use your learned communication skills, leadership skills, really to find solutions, to know design idea, and to create value added with new idea, and to invite people to join you. So it's really the moment to be close to the real life and to practice everything. What do you learn during this online courses, and after you just implement
Absolutely.
and this is very, very useful, because after you're very well prepared for a real situation. And now I can compare with my business knowledge about different tools. If I have to solve a complex situation, knowledge on finance part, on accounting, on management, on marketing, help you immediately to make a good decision. So it's really very useful and very valuable.
Thank you very much for that, Olga. And I agree. And the residential weeks also give incredible insights into, well, different cultures, but also we have quite a few company visits during those residential weeks, which also give you an idea of how things, the same thing maybe, will work on a different continent or in a different country. So these are some of the highlights of the program, but it really is designed specifically for people who have busy lives already and do want to do a degree like that, but also need to have the visibility and the flexibility to be able to do that. You know, and I do like to think that we provide that. Being a woman myself, I think if I'd done a program, it would have been had to be very flexible to take into account all the different elements of my life. So you know, so we've very much taken those requirements into consideration. And also, you know, before you even sign up for the program, exactly when those residential weeks are, even 18 months down the road. So it's very easy to plan.
And also, yeah, I would like to add another point that during the whole program of this executive MBA, we have a course named Doing Business Globally. And with these
Yes.
residential weeks across the world, it is very important and necessary exactly to understand the context, international context with different problems, with different specific political
Yes.
situations, social elements, economic sectors, etc. This is helpful to understand how we can run business internationally, or how to set up a new business, or to create a joint venture, etc. So it's
Absolutely.
this is useful for people who want to work internationally or to develop a business globally.
Yes, and I think even if you don't leave your country like Nathalie did, for example, as a result of the program, but we're all connected globally in some way, aren't we? So having that knowledge is actually really important at all sorts of levels. So I just wanted to show very quickly, because I'd like to leave some time for questions as well. This is the kind of journey that we propose, in which really we spend a lot of time on interlinking business function courses with other very strategic courses like sustainability issues, ethical issues, understanding organizational dilemmas, and you know, supply chains and business strategy in various stages of the journey. You will find that we've done it very specifically, in such a way, pedagogically, that you start with a very general big picture and you gradually drill into something much more specific, with a view to, well, potentially, if this is what your business requires or what your life requires, a business transformation. And one of the things we hadn't mentioned is the capstone project. You've seen it on this slide and the previous slide. Our capstone project is very much, it's like your end of program thesis. But this is where we want you, in order to really launch your next professional stage, to be able to focus on what you want to do next. And for some people, this is enhancing their leadership potential. In other cases, it's designing teams. In other cases, it might be an innovative entrepreneurial project idea. In Olga's case, it was the business plan to launch the company that she is now running. So we give people the tools and the support that's needed to get through the whole program, and obviously with the capstone project as well. And I am just so proud of Olga for having been able to achieve where she wants to go as a result of this program. I'm just going to show you very quickly. If you are interested in learning more, please contact Thierry Graf on the email address or phone number that's provided here. And on that note, I think, Olga, we will stop sharing the PowerPoint, but maybe, what would be your recommendation to somebody who would want to sign up for an EMBA but is hesitant because they've got all these other things going on? What would be your recommendations?
First of all, I think it's very important to understand really what you want to do like a next step. If, for example, you are looking for a promotion, just you need how you can improve your skills. So what is your needs and have to improve them. To obtain this promotion in your company. But for example, if you want to change the life and to set up a company, in this case, you are looking for an idea. In both cases, you come from an idea. It's the best way before starting the program to benefit at maximum of this academic part from Schema Business School, and also from support from Schema Venture. Because, with Schema Venture and with some courses like on entrepreneurship, business plan, new venture, innovation of management and marketing. So we learn how to design an idea. In fact, we can. It's the best way is to come with an idea, the great idea, and
However,
to test them and to test this schema and professors if this idea fits with the market needs and with a specific type of clients, and they help to build a business model. They help to pitch your ideas. They help to write a business plan and have to present to real investor. And this is really I recommend when you before starting this program, come with an idea and with what you do. Will be your motivation, and you will wake up every morning with this that you want to achieve.
Thank you so much, ladies. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We ran a little bit overboard. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Terry Griff. We will leave his email in the chat box. It truly has been so insightful to have you here. Thank you for sharing all of this.
Thank you.
Have a great day, and thanks again for joining us. If you're joining us now, welcome to the 2023 Women in MBA Global online event with top business schools in Europe and North America. And we also have some keynote speakers that will be sharing some amazing information with you today. Our virtual trip to the world of leadership and education continues with the topic unconscious bias and its impact on women in leadership. And it's truly my pleasure to welcome Kopil Yanis. She is the MBA Relationship Manager at University of Edinburgh. Hi, can you hear me? Sorry. Hi, it's great to see you. The floor is all yours.
Hi there. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. And hopefully you can see my slide. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Kopil Yanis. I'm the MBA Relationship Manager at the University of Edinburgh Business School. We'll be talking about unconscious bias and its impact on women in leadership. For most of you, my guess is that you already have a sense of the impact, or you've seen the impact or familiar with it. But we'll talk a little bit about the different sort of points of failure in the system, so to speak, that lead to limiting women being in leadership positions. We'll talk about how that happens and the fact that unconscious bias is one of the key ways that happens. And then we'll talk about how we did our best to eliminate that in the recruitment process at the University of Edinburgh. I don't want to make this a big pitch for the program. Certainly, I'm happy to talk about the program. Very proud of it. But I think it is illustrative of what we can do, and from your side, of the things that you should ask of organizations, whether they're doing these things, whether they've eliminated unconscious bias in their recruitment process, or the ways that you can figure out if they have or have not. So we'll actually be moving backwards through the topic. We'll start with kind of some broad strokes on women in leadership and the state of that just now, moving backwards through MBA programs and their contribution, either good or bad, to that. and then the role that unconscious bias plays in that process and how we can eliminate it, how we can sort of deal with that issue. So before we get into anything else, I just want to acknowledge the incredible amount of privilege that I have in being able to speak on this topic. I would much rather have had someone from our team, who can talk about the lived experience here. I certainly consider myself an ally, and these are issues that are very close to my heart. I am the sole individual who is responsible for the recruitment part on the MBA side of things. So I am here, unfortunately for you, to present this, but there is this issue of male, pale, and stale, right? And if you haven't heard that expression before, it's essentially this concept that people hire or recruit individuals who look like or behave like, or that they have the same expectations as yourself. This is at the root of unconscious bias. And so we do try and eliminate that, but I recognize that even as an ally, there's a huge amount of privilege for myself in being able to be here. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and thank you again for having me here. The other part that I wanted to discuss just briefly is about representation, the fact that the issues that we deal with in terms of encouraging and supporting excellent candidates who are women, a lot of these same issues are represented in issues of gender and issues of identity for LGBTQIA plus individuals. And so we want to acknowledge that some of the fights are the same fights, and hopefully we can help one another. So let's talk about women in leadership. And these are really broad strokes. We don't have a lot of time here today, so I'm just covering, just to give you a sense and to lead into some of the points I'm trying to make here. So this is by no means full coverage of the entire issue. And you'll see that I'm talking about Fortune 500 companies, for example, a US metric or a US list. The FTSE 100 is the UK. Most countries will have some version of it, but these are corporate lists, right? And for most of our programs, certainly for ours, we want to encourage you, whether you work for a corporate entity, one of these large Fortune 500 or FTSE 100 companies, or if you work for a charity or an NGO, or work for the UN, or work for a public organization, we want to encourage you. These issues cut across all of these organizations. But these are just meant to be illustrative. So in terms of the Fortune 500, which is the 500 biggest companies in the US, women run 10% of those organizations, and only 3, and that's not a percentage, that's an actual figure, only 3 of those individuals are women of color. So you can see that the representation, even just taken from a very a weak causal argument, there are certainly more scientific ones, and we'll talk about some of them a little bit later, but from a weak causal argument, the idea that half the population is female, half male, there should be more than 10% of organizations being run by women. The issue in the UK, no less of an issue. 7% of FTSE 100 companies are run by women, so that CEOs who are women, and there's 0 women of color in that list. So these issues are fairly big. And one of the things, when you raise these things or you talk to people about them, one of the arguments that's made is that, well, organizations are meritocracies. People will advance based on their abilities or their experience. So, okay, let's look then at those sectors where you have high representation of women. The UK state education sector, we certainly see that in that sector in a lot of different areas, and you see that only 65% of those schools are run by women who are head teachers. So this idea that it's a meritocracy, hopefully it goes away, because we recognize that unconscious bias is unconscious. Even people who are trying to do a good job, who mean the best, they may have issues of unconscious bias that they're dealing with. And so when we can bring those issues to the fore, and we'll talk about how we did that at the University of Edinburgh, everyone benefits. One of the other metrics here, that even in those schools where the parity is more accurate and more accurately reflects the population of the individuals who work at that organization. So head teachers, male versus female at state education schools, where the number of head teachers who are women is approximately close to the percentage of female representation in that organization. Men still become head teachers sooner. So even where parity, which is something that, where we try and reach equity or where we try and reach parity, even where that's either been accomplished or is being worked on, we can see that there's still issues with men being advanced in different ways than women are, to their detriment. So we want to eliminate some of the causes of that. So I have a question here that I want to leave with you. We'll actually look at this again at the end. It's just a great quote from someone who answers this question from this person's perspective. But I wanted you to think about it. Some of you may have already seen the quote. But the question is, in the US, the US Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, has 9 individuals on the court. The question is, how many of the 9 US Supreme Court justices would need to be women for equality to be achieved? In other words, if we didn't have any issues with equality, if everyone was being treated the same and everyone had access and ability, and it really was a meritocracy, how many of those 9 Supreme Court justices would need to be women to demonstrate that? So think about that for yourself. We will come back to that question, but it comes back to this issue of how we frame it, how we look at things, and where unconscious bias kind of plays a role. So if we have women in leadership as the broad headline, that there are issues within that, and we will talk about progress, and we will talk about some reasons for hope and opportunity. But we know that there's an issue. We know that there should be more women in leadership, and that there are certainly capable women who should be in leadership positions who aren't, for various reasons. So we want to look at the MBA program, look at our MBA program, and see, are we contributing to the benefit there? Are we contributing to being part of the problem? So I should have flipped these 2 pieces of data, but the first one I want to focus on is that over half of the applicants for us, this is increasingly becoming the case for a lot of MBA programs, but over half of applicants on MBA programs are women. The typical breakout, and actually this is an improvement in the past few years for most programs, but the typical breakout is that 60% of the students on an MBA program are men, 40% are women. That statistic used to be closer to 70-30 about a decade ago when I started working at the University of Edinburgh. And we'll talk about how we moved from that into the place where we are now. But as you can see, MBA programs, and MBA programs aren't the only place or the only incubator for women in leadership. There are plenty of women who are advancing in their careers, who are entrepreneurs, who are working in different areas, who won't get MBAs. We're just talking about the areas certainly that I'm familiar with, so coming at it from that side, but also, to discuss how we can improve. One of the ways that people can get better advancement opportunities is to get an education. And so if those programs are themselves biased, then the outcome, the number of women who are going into leadership roles, can also be influenced for the good and to the detriment. So we want to improve these numbers. I want to talk about this very quickly. It's just the one of the solutions that's given by, and I refer to this as the tech bro problem. I am using that word tech bro pejoratively, and I don't mean to insult anyone. What I'm talking about are the individuals who believe that most issues of either parity, equality, diversity, what have you, issues of meritocracy can be solved with an algorithm, or can be solved with AI, that essentially a computer program or a mathematical algorithm cannot be racist, cannot be misogynistic, cannot be unfair. And we find, of course, that that's not true at all. There's certainly a lot of examples of it, but the one that comes to mind most recently is in the UK during the pandemic, because students couldn't gather to do their A-level exams, which are then used as the basis for them going into the universities or getting offers from universities for undergraduate study. The government got involved and said, we are going to take the recommendation from schools and from the faculty, the teachers who teach these students, and their recommendation on what they think the final grade for that student would be if they had been able to take the test. And then we're going to apply an algorithm to make sure that it's completely fair. You can tell where this is going. The outcome was that the systemic issues with racism and with underrepresentation of individuals based on, as they refer to the postcode lottery, based on where you lived, that was replicated by the algorithm. So if the algorithm can't be racist or misogynistic or biased, how is that possible? Well, the answer is because artificial intelligence is neither. It's neither artificial nor intelligent. And I don't mean that in the glib way of, this stuff won't solve anything, won't help anything. It really looks like AI and these language learning models are going to change the world in a significant way. So it's definitely something that's going to happen, but they're designed by individuals. So if you design an algorithm that is biased, the outcome is going to be biased. So if you hear that as a solution, or if that starts to become, because we're hearing about ChatGPT, OpenAI, all these other organizations that are coming out with these solutions, they'll go into everything, make sure that you're still keeping that human element, whether it's in your organization or from your side where you're applying for jobs or applying to MBA programs, that you're asking about, if someone says, we use an AI to review, and this is starting to happen, we use an AI to review all of the cover letters. Great. Tell me about the process that you went through that. How did you account for unconscious bias in the development of that algorithm? How is that working? So these are questions you should feel comfortable asking. So unconscious bias, like I said, we were sort of moving backwards through the steps in terms of the issue that we have with not enough women represented in positions of leadership, to the MBA programs that are part of or are supposed to be part of the solution to that, and helping people to advance and to reach higher levels, to gain new knowledge and to be able to move into other roles. So if you have a limited number of women in leadership roles, and you have a limited number of women going into MBA programs that can sometimes help them get into those leadership roles, what is it that's causing fewer women to be in the MBA programs that could lead to that? And one of the answers, one of the issues, and one of the things that we dealt with in terms of really examining this and developing a way around it, is unconscious bias. So unconscious bias is one of those things that you'll find a lot of definitions for, but sometimes it's easier to see it from the perspective of examples, things that you may have seen or that you may have come across. So one of them, and there's research for everything that I've been talking about here. If you'd like to see references, please get in touch. I'm happy to provide those for you and tell you a little bit more about how we did all these things. But one of the key areas of research that one of our faculty members, and that was part of the reason why this was so close to our hearts, because our faculty members were actually studying this, was this finding that women are selected for their accomplishments, whereas men are selected for their potential. And what I mean by that is, if you have, let's say you have an application process, whether it's for an MBA program or for a job, excuse me, and it has, like most job specs do, it has a list of things. This will account for 20% of the role. This is 5%, this is 15%. Or a checkbox. This person should be able to do, have a comfort with leadership roles, have budgetary responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that some recruitment organizations, committees, individuals look at this is that women need to tick every single box. So let's say you have a job listing of 10 items, and a woman ticks 8 of those boxes. She is now being compared to everyone else based on those 8 boxes, right? So if someone comes in, theoretically, someone comes in who's more qualified and ticks 10 of those boxes, then that person would have the edge over the first candidate, right? But that's not the way that men are being looked at, or that's not the way that men are being looked at when there's an unconscious bias at work in the selection process. And the issue is that men will be selected for their potential, meaning, well, he doesn't meet this particular category, and he's never done this thing that's in this checkbox, but he has a lot of potential. Some of the things he's done will definitely get him there. I think this is the candidate that we want. So you can see that if you have this unconscious bias built into your process, where you're looking at, it's the same requirement list that you're always looking at, but if you're judging one candidate against another by completely different criteria, then that's the issue. And if you don't know that you're doing this, if you're doing it subconsciously, and wherever it came from, this is an unconscious bias. I refer to this as the handshake principle, you know, this idea that I've seen in action, thankfully not at the business school, but elsewhere, where someone comes in and the final comment that someone has about having interacted with someone was, I'm not sure if they're the right person, but they had a really firm handshake. My goal is to eliminate the concept of the firm handshake from anyone's lexicon. Language matters. If you're using language that you would use for one individual differently for the same behavior or the same language and actions, or providing, as the next bullet point has, different rewards for someone based on the same exact behaviors. These are ways that you represent one person in a different way to another, and it's a way that unconscious bias seeps into the process. So we want to try and eliminate that. One of the biggest problems with this is the vicious cycle that it creates, where you have individuals in an organization lessening the impact or the value of an entire group of individuals in an organization, or simply not selecting those individuals. And consequently, and the research is there for some of this as well, those individuals feeling like they identify with that lesser quality. So we want to eliminate these things. How can we do that? At the business school here, the first one was about awareness. So when I came in, I was tasked with coming up with a customer journey model that was inclusive, that would increase the diversity of the cohort and increase the gender parity, get us to gender parity if we could. I wasn't told that I had to get 50-50 or some number. I was simply told that diversity had value, something that certainly I believed in, and was asked to go and figure out how to do that. In talking to the faculty, because they'd done some research on recruitment processes, primarily for organizations, but obviously this applies for the recruitment process in an MBA program. The research that I was talking about earlier, that all came to the fore, and I was asked, what have you done about unconscious bias in the application process or in the recruitment process? And that began the process of awareness, understanding what the issue was, that could influence the candidates that we brought in, and that it could impact who we brought into the program. In terms of what we did to eliminate that, or to try and get rid of that, training is very important for our organization. Training on unconscious bias. You can train people to look at these things and start to recognize that certain language that they use, or the way that they automatically make judgments about an entire group of people, whether that's on gender, on nationality, on belief system, whatever it is, training your recruiters and the people who are involved in that process to be better about that, to pay attention to it. The way you bring that into some organizations, unfortunately, isn't because it comes up organically. It's because you have to legislate it, and that's absolutely fine. It's the way that some movements are made, is by making sure that the government says, well, there'll be consequences of it. But we can do things like, I can't spam you, for example. I can't send thousands of emails asking you to sign up for everything. That's a GDPR guideline, and then there's legislation in the UK and in the rest of the EU to develop these things. Certainly, we can legislate some of this to make sure that the process is even.
Kopil, just a very quick reminder, we have about 2 minutes left, so if you'd like to wrap up, and then we can go to some quick questions.
Brilliant. The biggest issue, I think, for you from being on the other side of it, so if you're applying for an organization, or if you're applying for an MBA, is this issue of transparency. Any organization that believes in these values, that believes in this, has put it into their mission or vision statements, they will be absolutely happy to answer questions about it. If you came to me and said, we want to see what your gender distribution is. Have you eliminated unconscious bias? I can talk about all these things to you, with you, and that is what we want to try and do. Get to a point where you feel comfortable asking that in an interview, when most of the interviews, if you're doing them, they will ask you, or if you're calling and getting a consult, they will ask you what questions you have have this one be, if it's something that you value, have this one be one of the ones that you ask about. So there is progress. The FTSE 100 had set as a goal, or rather, the government had set a goal or a guideline that the FTSE 100 organizations should have about 40% of their board roles occupied by women. That was a milestone that's been achieved relatively recently. It's not nearly where we need to be, but it is an improvement. The gender split at our business school has been 50-50 for almost a decade. That's on the back of the work that we did to make sure that we weren't bringing in that unconscious bias. And so it is possible to do this, and you should ask about it. You can get the benefit of that. So I'll leave you with this. This is the answer. The one person's answered, the Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in answer to that question about how many Supreme Court justices should be women in order to show that there's parity. So now the perception is, yes, women are here to stay. And when I'm sometimes asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And I say, when there are 9, people are shocked. But there had been 9 men, and nobody's ever raised the question about that. I love that because it reframes it, in terms of looking at it from the perspective of, these are fights that people are having, that the allies are having, that the people with lived experience are having. And yet when the opposition comes in or the argument comes back, well, it's not that bad. There was no complaint when it was all one group of individuals who were represented in an organization or in the Supreme Court or what have you. So this is progress that we want to make and that we can make and that we are making. We need to move a little bit faster. So those are some very quick strokes on it. Happy to take any questions, whether it's about our program or about anything related to this, how you can address it. Happy to take any of those questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please leave it in the chat box. I'm sure that Copa will stay around and he can answer as well in the chat box or over email. Unfortunately, we're out of time to take some more questions, but thank you so much for joining us. It has been really insightful. For those of you who are joining now, welcome to the 2023 Women in MBA Global Online Event with top business schools in North America and Europe. We have some inspiring examples of leadership in women making a difference. I'm very delighted to turn the floor to our next presentation from Bentley University Business School. Today we have Gordon Berridge, who is the Senior Associate Director at Bentley, who would be joined by Jen Potler, who is an associate within the FLD program at Novartis Pharmaceuticals. She's also an alumna of Bentley University, and we're very excited to have you joining us. And they will be telling us a little bit more on the topic about making the move from your MBA into the career you want. Gordon, Jen, I'm sure you guys are with us, so the floor is yours.
Excellent. Yes, thank you so much. I see we have quite a few people here today. Unfortunately, I can't see everybody. I just want to make sure that, Jen, are you here with us? Can you hear me?
Yes, Gordon, I'm here and I can hear you.
Excellent. Jen, thanks so much for joining us. So thank you so much for that warm introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Gordon Berridge. I'm the Senior Associate Director here at Bentley University's McCallum Graduate School of Business. I'm also an alumni. I too graduated from Bentley University. And we're here today to talk a little bit about what it's like to make that transition from your MBA into the career you want. And I am so incredibly excited to be joined by my fellow alumni, Jen Potler. Jen Potler, as we mentioned, is currently an associate within the Finance Development Program at Novartis Pharmaceuticals. The FDP program is based out of the U.S. headquarters. Her rotation have brought her into the BPA Pharma, the FRA Gross to Net, the U.S. Treasury, and Central BPA. Jen graduated from the McCallum Graduate School of Business with her MBA and a master's in business analytics. So she's what we refer to as a double falcon, having earned 2 degrees here at Bentley University. So Jen, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to have you here today with us.
Thank you, Gordon.
So to get things started, I'd love to ask you, what advice would you give women who are thinking about applying to an MBA here in the United States?
Yeah, I think the best way to put it, and it might sound oversimplified, but I think the best way to put it is just to do it. with grad school, there's always going to be a reason to, the way I see it, there's always going to be a reason to put off grad school. For me, right, I was coming directly from undergrad, and I had the choice to make where I had an offer from the company I'd interned with previously, or I could, essentially turn that down and apply to grad school and focus on really what I want to do long-term with my career and grow that space. And I know for some of my other friends who also, that I've met at Bentley, had the other situation where they had already left their undergraduate programs, had already been working for a while, and were thinking about essentially taking time off of their workforce and coming back to school and going to grad school. So I think there's always going to be something stopping you from grad school, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. There's always going to be something going on, and there's always going to be, a part of you that says, maybe I wait another year and do it after I get the next promotion, or maybe I work one more year and get some more experience and do it later. There's always going to be a reason to put it off. But I think the way I see it, the pros and benefits and really just the advantages of having an MBA brings to your career really outweigh that 2 years that you have to take off to really commit to it and to do it.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much. That's some great advice, Jen. So the next question I want to ask you a little bit is about, you obviously had a lot of options when you're thinking about grad school. What was it that kind of finally made you decide that, going to grad school and ultimately Bentley was the right choice for you?
Yeah, so I originally applied at a lot of different schools, and I had a few offers on the table when I was considering things. And it was really important for me to choose the right school, right? Because it could be everything to your career. So I think for me, the biggest thing that if I had to really, I thought about this over the last few days, and I really thought about, what's the one thing that made Bentley stand out to me? And it was honestly an easy answer for me. And I genuinely think it's Bentley's investment in every single person's unique path. I think a lot of MBA programs, as great as they are, have one linear path that they kind of expect all of their candidates to take in terms of coursework or direction of where they're headed after. But I think if you look at Bentley alum, right, we have such a wide range of careers that people go out and go into. And I think Bentley really does a great job of allowing people to tailor their MBA coursework and their MBA experience to really fit what they want to do after. And I remember when I interviewed at Bentley as well, I actually interviewed with Andy Crawford, who I still think works for the admissions team now. Yeah. And I know even during my interview, I wasn't even in yet, but he was very curious in knowing what I want to do after. And he was already during my interview, like giving me advice and direction of what I could do during my MBA to really help tailor my MBA coursework and my experience to what I want to do after. And I think, I really wanted that in a school because I wanted to make sure that as invested as I was in my career, that my school would be as well. And they would be invested in making sure that I'm doing the right thing for myself and not just doing the one coursework or one path that was laid out for everyone.
Oh, that's excellent, Jen. Thank you so much for that. I'm so glad to hear you met with Andy. Andy's still here and he's doing great. So he'll be so excited to hear that. So you're currently working for Novartis Pharmaceuticals, obviously known all around the world. And you're currently in a financial leadership program. Can you tell us a little bit about what this is and why you chose to do this maybe over a traditional position at an organization?
Yes. So I know finance leadership programs are tailored a little differently at each company, but the one at Novartis, the way it works is you essentially intern. It's tailored towards 2-year MBA candidates. So you intern the summer between your 2 years of your MBA program. And if given the opportunity to, you start full-time after. And you spend your first 2 years in the program essentially going through 6 months or so of rotations. So it's 4 6-month rotations. And it's built to give candidates the opportunity to really experience different sectors of finance within Novartis. And especially at a company like Novartis, it's so big and there's so many different areas. As you read in my bio earlier, I've already been to 4 areas in finance, and there's many more. There's many more I haven't even touched yet, like operational finance, so on. I think it's just a unique program and a unique opportunity for people to really experience different parts of the company, especially if you are not really sure where you want to go. It's a great way to start because it gives you a flavor for many different roles in the company and really lets you experience things firsthand. Whereas a traditional role, you go into somewhere and you most likely stay there for a long time. You could go into, say, treasury, and you work in treasury and you work there for 2 decades of your life, and that's what you see. So this is a unique opportunity to kind of see different pieces of the company. And it was also built so that it trains future finance leaders who have a good overall understanding of the company, right? You want your future CFO or your future head of finance for the US portion of Novartis to not just know whichever sector they worked in for 20 years, but you want them to know the entire company. So it's a great way to learn the entire company while also finding what might be a good fit for you longer term.
Oh, that's excellent. What a great opportunity. So after you complete this rotational program, what happens afterwards? Do you get a particular position? Do you get to choose who you want to go? What happens next?
Yeah, so after the 2 years, it's still a bit more guided, actually. It's expected that the way they advertise it, the program is actually supposed to be advertised as 6 years long. So you have these 2-year rotations that are 6 months each. And then the next 4 years after that, you essentially take on two 2-year roles. And 2 of those years are expected to be in what we call BPA, or what a lot of companies call FP&A. So it's essentially business planning and analysis. And you're supposed to spend 2 years learning how to work a business planning and analysis role, a high level role where you're running the planning cycles of the company and planning the financials for a sector of the business, whether it's in the US or, since we're a global company, you have the opportunity to go elsewhere as well. I know someone who's actually going on next to work in London for 2 years. So the opportunities are endless, really. And I know someone who spent 2 years as the head of BPA for India. So really, we have so many options. And then the 2 years after that, you're supposed to are expected to spend 2 years in what we call FRA, which is our reporting side of finance. So again, just learning the reporting structure and learning the other half of finance. And it's expected that once you have all this experience under your belt, you go on to be a senior leader at the company. And whether you are then the head of finance of a whole country or a whole region, or you go on to be a CFO, it's essentially expected that you're following through with this program to help you train to be a CFO or a high level leader down the line. But obviously, 2 years in BPA, 2 years in FRA, that's not meant for everyone. Some people want to do different things. So there is a level of flexibility to what you want to do, because we want to make sure that while the company is training for future finance leaders, we're also making sure we're taking in, people's personal preferences and considerations and where they really see themselves in their career as well.
That's incredible. Wow. I mean, to work in all of those different departments, that must take a lot of different types of skill sets to go from. I mean, even though it's all kind of finance, it does sound like it's all a lot of different skills. So then how has receiving your MBA helped you in this particular role, particularly with all these, working within all these different departments every 6 months?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of agility that goes into being an FDP, right? Because you're constantly switching roles, constantly moving around, doing different things. And I think Bentley really prepared me well for that, because the way that the Bentley MBA program I know is structured, you are not pigeonholed into one thing ever. And I know there's all these different requirements in the coursework where you're expected to kind of branch out and do different classes. Like, I know just because I had my concentration in finance, I did not just take finance courses in my MBA. I took some leadership courses, took some management courses. And I think all of that, right, like gives you such a broad understanding of who you are as a business professional, but also prepares you for much more than just working in finance. It gives you all these leadership skills, these communication skills that I think are sometimes much more valued and helps you get your foot in the door than just knowing how to do the job, right? And I think even with so many of the workshops that Bentley offers, Bentley goes above and beyond to host workshops, I think, on a regular basis to help people really advance whatever skill they want to work on, right? Because we all come in with different experiences under our belt, and we all have different skill sets, and we all have different things we want to work on and improve on. And Bentley really does a good job of like creating all these opportunities, workshops, recruiting events to really help their candidates like put their best foot forward and really be prepared for when that interview comes and when you have to make yourself look great.
That's excellent. And I'm so glad to hear you were able to participate in all those things, because I do think it's so incredibly important to make sure that you're prepared when you're out there, and particularly in this particular role where you are, again, transitioning and working with so many different, departments and in areas. So, when you think back about your experience within the MBA, what specifically did you do during your time within the MBA that you feel has helped you the most within your current role at Novartis Pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, so I think something big that perhaps not helped me with my goal helped me with my role, but just getting here in general, perhaps, right, is I think the grad career development team. I think we are so blessed at Bentley to have an excellent grad career development team that is so focused on their students. And I am so blessed to have had them in my life during my MBA program, because they were so involved with helping me land a job, but not just a job, right? Like the job that was right for me. I remember actually at me meeting the team at Novartis almost didn't happen, because I remember seeing the recruiting event and thinking, oh, that's not a good fit for me, because I remember I was just being very narrow-minded about it at the time. And I said I didn't want to like move to New Jersey, I think was my reason, or whatever it was. I was more focused on finding a role in the Boston area because that's where I grew up. But I remember at the time, Colleen, Audra, and Lucy, who all work for GCD, pushed me and said, no, look, we think this job is really good fit for you. Like, why don't you go talk to people? Why don't you go to this recruiting event? And I ended up falling in love with the company. And here I am now, like 4 years later. Who would have thought? So it's really crazy. But I think Bentley like gives you like push you. And I think the GCD team was one of those things that I really took advantage of. And I'm glad I did, because they helped me put just my best foot forward. And at the same time, Bentley offers a lot of research assistant positions, which I don't know if it's for everyone, because, you know, some people have other things going on. But I, as someone who was doing the MBA program full time, I had the free time to kind of take on other opportunities and other work stints. So I chose to actually be a research assistant to a professor one semester. And I think that was a great opportunity, because I learned so much from her and her research and what she was working on at the time. And it was just an additional thing for me to also, you know, additional work experience that I gained during my time at Bentley. And also just being able to work in research and academia, it wasn't something that I'd ever done. So it was a really unique opportunity. And I think it gave me a different perspective, and also just helped me learn a little bit more. So I think things like that, like Bentley has so many like small things that it's small, unique opportunities that I think everyone does different things. And those are just some of the things that I did that I think really helped me down the line.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad to hear that you had all the support that you needed, and ultimately you ended up in a really great position that you're really happy with as you go through.
Yeah.
So in a minute, I'm going to open it up to any questions that you may have for me or for Jen. Desislava, I may ask you to help me out a little bit with the questions. I'm going to ask Jen one more question, and then as we do, as questions pop up. So I guess my final question for you, Jen, is, you know, as women around the world are thinking about going and obtaining their MBA, whether that's, you know, here in the US or at Bentley or wherever, what advice would you give women as they're thinking about, okay, what career do I want to get into? Where do I want to go? And thinking about using the MBA to transition into that, what advice might you give somebody thinking about taking that step, but also ultimately getting into that career path that they want to get into?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to be really intentional with every step along the way, right? Because it doesn't just happen at the end. You don't just go through the MBA and then you fall into the right opportunity at the end. It doesn't happen like that. You have to really be intentional about every single decision you make during those 2 years during your MBA program. It's whether it's picking the exact right course that'll help you get that experience for that job that you want, or whether it's going to that workshop, or whether it's doing research on that field. Like, I know that I really wanted to work in the pharmaceutical field because I was very interested in the healthcare space. But as someone who's always worked in business and done all of my educational background in business, I didn't know a lot about pharmaceuticals and science, right? Like, I wasn't a science person. So I spent a lot of time on my own, like researching pharma companies and what's going on in that space right now, and really trying to understand the science of it and what the companies do behind the scenes, right? So I think it's things like that. Like, you really, like, if you're committing to taking the next step with the MBA program and your intention is to make that career change or make that big jump in your career next, you have to just be very intentional with everything you're doing. Like, it's sometimes easy to fall into stride at school or fall into stride in the program and just kind of do what you think is expected or fall through with the coursework, right? But I think what makes someone extraordinary is to be really intentional about it, because especially when you're looking for that next career move, you get asked a lot, honestly. Like, when you're leaving grad school and looking for opportunities and you're recruiting for jobs, you get asked a lot why you took that course or what did you do during your grad school experience that you think would help you be the right fit for that specific job? And that's something you get asked a lot. So I think what helps you is just being very, very intentional about every single decision you make during those 2 years.
That's great. Jen, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So Desislava, do we have any questions for myself or for Jen?
So currently we don't, but please feel free if you're watching this webinar to write a question in the chat box, and we can read them to our lovely participants and they can answer. But in the meantime, I would love to ask a question myself, if you don't mind. I was wondering, how big is the MBA alumni network, and what is the geographical reach?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to answer that question. So we have alumni all around the world. I mean, we as a graduate school have been around for over 50 years. As a matter of fact, I think 2023 is our 50-year anniversary as a graduate school. But then as a institution, as a university, we've been around for over 100 years. So our alumni network is vast. We have people all around the world, and we have a pretty active alumni network. So if you're in a city and you want to reach out to fellow alumni, you can do that. So we have a very big population in New York City, right by Jen, down near New Jersey. We have them in LA, Seattle, Mumbai, London, Athens. And so they're really all around the world. And so what's really nice is I've been very fortunate, not only, as I mentioned, I work here at Bentley, but I'm also an alumni. And I've been very fortunate in my life to travel all around the world. And I reach out to alumni all the time, whether it's to grab coffee or grab dinner or to talk to a potential student. And alumni are always so incredibly gracious, like Jen here, with their time to come and spend time talking to people. And so it's so incredibly it's such an incredibly tight-knit community, and they really want to see not only Bentley succeed as an institution, but also the people succeed, because they know what you've gone through and they want you to be successful as a fellow alumni, to really grow and prosper. Jen, would you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. I actually live in like an entire family of Bentley alum. My husband's also a Bentley alum. All of our friends went to Bentley. I'm constantly surrounded by Bentley folks. And I think at the same time, right, when I was applying to jobs and really exploring opportunities, I know I reached out to a lot of Bentley alum who worked at different companies to kind of learn more about their time, their experience there, whatever it may be, right? Sometimes just like Gordon said, sometimes just to grab coffee, learn a little bit more about them. And everyone is always just so kind and so gracious with their time, and also just so uniquely invested in just helping each other succeed. I think we have such a unique group of alumni in the sense that we're all very happy to help each other. And I think that's just also, it's just great. And I don't know if all schools are like this. I can't speak for the rest, but I think it's something that Bentley we do a really great job of. And I know the school itself, we host a lot of events like every year, even for alumni to connect with current candidates, as well as just alumni events as well. So I think all of those, I know whenever one of those events goes out, all of my friends get very excited to go and see folks that we haven't seen in years and things like that. So I think the school does a good job of helping us maintain the network as well.
That's really great. Since you guys have such a great network, I was just wondering, has there been a situation where they establish a business after graduating, or is that common at all, alumni to connect and go on a business venture together?
I know of a few. Jen, do you know of any?
I know of a handful, actually, yes, because I think Bentley just has, like I said, right, there's such a unique opportunity at Bentley to really tailor your MBA to your own liking. So I think some people come into it fully with the expectation that they know what they want to do. They know they want to create a business, and they get together with folks at Bentley and make it happen. So I've seen a handful of entrepreneurial ventures come out of Bentley.
Yeah, we've had quite a few. We have one, I can name a couple right here off the top of my head. We have a brand new chain of restaurants breweries here in the Boston area called Trillium Breweries. And it was started by alumni, an amazing woman who graduated with her MBA from Bentley University. And they now have, I think, 3 or 4 locations in the Boston area. It's one of the biggest growing microbreweries in Boston. I was recently in Mumbai, and we have another woman who is also a Bentley MBA and MSF graduate, Master's in Finance graduate, who started a chain of restaurants in Mumbai called Poco Loco, which has become one of the hottest growing restaurants in Mumbai. I have other alumni who have started analytical businesses. I have one alumni who just got a big investment from Google in his company. And so there are all of these, if you go onto our website, you can see a lot of these entrepreneurs who started all different types of companies from all different walks of life. And so it's really exciting if you go on and take a look. But it really does become a little bit of an incubator here because you're meeting with people. And the MBA program is great because it brings people from all different types of backgrounds as well and different experiences that you can work together with.
Thank you so much. Would you mind just jotting down the website and the contact information? So if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you directly, and they can definitely look at some testimonials, alumni examples. That would be really great for everyone in the audience as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys
I'll put it right here in the chat. Thank you so much
for joining us. It has been really insightful. Now I would like to jump along to our next presenters. So if you're joining us now, welcome to the 2023 Women in MBA event, where we have top business schools in Europe and North America and some keynote speakers by female leadership experts. It is my great pleasure to introduce Rebecca Casey, Aditi Adhikari, and Kirsty Seltz Clark. They're from Newcastle University Business School, and they will talk about exploring the unseen barriers to the business world. Ladies, can you hear me? Can you see me? Are you here?
Hi.
Great. Hi. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Oh, Aditi, I can see your face. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Dr. Rebecca Casey. I'm director of the full-time MBA program here at Newcastle University Business School in the northeast of England. And I'm delighted to be joined by Aditi, who is from our MBA alumni community. And Aditi's background, she was a business analyst with SAP before coming on to our MBA program. And I think it's the same for a lot of MBA students. It becomes a very transformative journey embarking on an MBA, and sometimes where you end up is not where you potentially planned to be at the beginning, which is one of the great things about an MBA program. And we're going to talk about some of the unseen barriers in the business world and indeed the world of academia, because Aditi has now embarked on a career in academia and is close to completing her PhD. So there are kind of lots of different worlds and experiences that Aditi has and can draw on to talk about some of the unseen barriers. So we're going to take a fireside chat format to this talk. So I'm going to ask Aditi questions and she's going to talk about her own personal experiences. So firstly, I just wanted to ask you, Aditi, about some of the key kind of unseen barriers that come to mind that you've experienced in your career, both in the business world as a business analyst, and also now as you enter the new world of academia.
So, hi everybody. So I think I had plenty of, I would say, reservations before I started my MBA or before I actually embarked on this academic journey here in the UK. So I think the first thing that came to my mind was I was very insecure. I was not sure whether I'll be able to manage the this work. I'll able to have like a work-life balance, because obviously I was married, and had the responsibilities of taking care of the household. And obviously MBA is like a full-time job. You have to dedicate yourself completely. So I was not sure whether that is something for me to do at this stage. So obviously that was one. And then the other was, obviously I was not sure whether this is something that will help me to progress in my career, because obviously I think as a woman we always look up to women, and I would say there are not a lot of mentors or not a lot of female leaderships that you can look up to. So I had that reservation as well. But I would say that I was fortunate enough that I started my journey at Newcastle University Business School because I was surrounded by plenty of examples. Because the business school director, Sharon Mavin, a woman, incredible woman, always motivating, always supporting in whatever you want to do. Then you were there, and then there were plenty of other examples. So right now I'm doing a PhD, as you told everybody. And then, so you are my supervisor. And then I had another supervisor, Karen Elliott, both strong women, always supporting, always motivating. And I would say that this PhD journey would have not been possible if it was not because of you both encouraging me and motivating me and providing me the platform and all the resources to excel. And then the other kind of barriers, I would say, were the fact that, whether I'll be able to present myself. I lacked a lot of confidence. I could never ever like in 1,000 years imagine that I'll be speaking on an open platform like this and be this open and will be sharing my experiences. So I had these kind of reservations whether I'll be able to, have these kind of open discussions, because as a part of the assessment, it was not just like, writing assignments. There were group discussions, there were presentations and all these things. So obviously I had that sort of in my mind whether I'll be able to do those things, because I lacked confidence. And I think these are the main unseen barriers that are there, which we are not aware of, because they are there, but we never think about them. Yeah, we think about other logistical barriers, I would say, in terms of finances, in terms of, commute, and in terms of our accommodation and stuff like that. But there are these barriers that are available and they actually hold you back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And self-doubt and that imposter syndrome, we know to be a very significant unseen barrier. And as you pointed out, role models and coaching and mentoring can be some of the ways that we can overcome that particular unseen barrier. And what was your experience coming, prior to coming onto the MBA program? Were there other unseen barriers that you were aware of, like, so social conditioning, at a more societal level, some of the kind of implicit biases that people have, particularly in relation to gender, for example, or just a lack of awareness as well about those who may be coming from more marginalized groups. What was your experience prior to the MBA in relation to some of those unseen barriers?
I think women in the society are viewed to perform certain roles and take up certain responsibilities. And that is prevalent in, I think, all the countries. We look at, certain countries and say, okay, it is more, I would say, prominent in those countries. But I think at a certain level, it's there everywhere. And so obviously that I experienced certain things in my workplace as well, because the kind of track that I was in. So I was a business analyst in infrastructure management, and my track mainly focused on a telephony infrastructure. So I was the only girl in my team. So obviously for them, it was like, how can a girl work in such a team? Because obviously there was no timing, so we had to work in shifts. So there were certain shifts that were late night, so they were always concerned, okay, how can a girl do this thing? But I didn't have any problem in doing that, but they had a problem in allocating me those shifts. So I think women, they are viewed in a certain way everywhere, and that is something that I think needs to be eradicated. It's on track, I would say, because things have drastically changed, but I think that it's still there's a long way to go.
Yeah, and so given the role of management and leadership intervention in situations that you've just described, and the importance that they bring to bear on changing those that kind of mindset and those biases that people come to the workplace with, how would you say an MBA, studying an MBA, can help to change some of those kind of established biases and kind of blindness, if you like, in the workplace?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that MBA does is it makes you self-aware. So it's more of self-actualization. That's how I term it. So it makes you self-aware, and it makes you uh, more conscious and more knowledgeable about your traits, about your personality types, about your, I would say, strengths and as well as weaknesses. So it makes you aware of yourself, and I think that is something that helps you to survive and to progress in the world out there. So it's like not just professionally but personally as well, because I think before doing the MBA, as I said, I had this massive stage fear. But now, after the MBA, like the kind of presentations that we had to go through, and then all these top level companies like HDFC and stuff, we have to go there and present our findings to their senior leadership. I would have never thought in my entire life that I'll be doing something like that, and that too with enough confidence. And actually we won that case competition, so which was like something else. So obviously when you have that exposure, or when you get that hands-on practice, then obviously all these kinds of I would say the reservations that you have had are lifted. And then we had a module that was called personal and professional transformation in our MBA. So the one of the core aspects of the module was personal development. And in that, as I said, you need to be self-aware. In that, there were like 6 or 7 tools that we were introduced to, where we were made to sit down, reflect, and think about what kind of a personality we have. And on the basis of that, what kind of a career will suit us the best. And, how we can progress in our career, and what kind of a thinking or how our mind works basically. So obviously when you are so aware about yourself, you know what to do, and you have that confidence that yes, you can do anything.
Thanks, Aditi. And can you explain a little bit more about, I mean, you mentioned that module, personal and professional transformation. And you're right, there is something about that self-awareness and understanding kind of traits and personality types. But then in terms of putting that into action and understanding how that influences you as a manager and a decision maker, can you say a little bit more about, because I know it's a favorite with students, is the role play week, the personal development week, where we bring in actors and put everybody in these kind of strange, extreme situations, and with little information, you're expected to make decisions. And of course, those are perfect examples where often, some biases can come to the surface, and it can be quite transformative to have those revealed to oneself and to one's peers. So could you say a little bit about that week and how you found that?
So the first thing is that the most interesting part of the week was that it was completely confidential. We didn't know what to expect for that week. So it was like hyped a lot for over a month that, this week is coming up, but we will not tell you what is going to happen. So we were very excited, and, it was really a very different kind of experience, I would say, because it was 5 days long, and every day we were made to do different tasks, and there were some external consultants who were there to just observe us. they just sat there and they asked us to do certain exercises, and one of, as you said, role play was one of them. So it was like they create original scenarios where the actors enact, for example, as employees, and you are the manager, and they give you a certain situation, and so how are you going to handle that situation? And it all looks so real because the actors are actually properly acting, like crying and screaming and stuff like that. So you actually get like a real feeling of, yes, that is actually that is really happening. And then you are to make a decision based on your understanding, based on your learning that you have done through your MBA. And it's not just like that particular module, it's like in all the modules. If whatever you have learned, you just have to apply it there. So it's more of theory in practice kind of a thing. And then they observe you and they see what kind of what kind of decision you take and how you react to it, and on the basis of that they give you an analysis. And it was very interesting about all the things that they said about me, and I never thought about myself that way, but they said that the way I handled the situation led them to this analysis. And after that week, I think the things that they said about me, they somewhat got embedded in me. And now, even if I don't know if I'm like that, but I still believe I'm like that. So yeah, it's more like that. And it's just not that, you have other group activities as well, where you are made to do certain tasks. I would not reveal it because everything is very confidential. uh, so yeah, so they are made to do certain tasks, and those and they observe how you work as a group as well, because I think group dynamics and working in a team and how you handle yourself in a team is very important nowadays. Because I think, given the fact that all the hierarchies are getting flattened somehow, uh, you have to have that sense of team building and like surviving in a team. So obviously they observed and they gave us insights as to what kind of a team player we are. And uh, I think our cohort consisted of people from 16 different nationalities, and everybody had a very different personality. Everybody came from a very different background, not just nationalities. Like, I think there were people from almost 26 professions. I think only a few of us were from IT. Apart from that, uh, it ranged from lawyers to business managers to doctors and whatnot. So it was like a completely such a discrete and different kind of a cohort, but we all worked together harmoniously. Obviously, everybody had reservations, and you grow as you move along in your MBA, and it teaches you a lot of things because it exposes you to a lot of different dimensions that you have never come across in your life. And that's what I think my MBA at Newcastle University gave me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was a lovely way to end it. Can I just check? Are we okay for time, or should we move on to Q&A now?
We have about 2 minutes, and then we can go to Q&A.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think you summed it up there nicely, Aditi, and particularly touching on that point about diversity. And that's something that we value so very much at Newcastle University. And as you say, diversity of nationality, diversity of industry background, years of experience. And it really is so valuable and contributes so much to creating a sense of collective wisdom and being able to accommodate different perspectives and different views. And also, it really helps to remove and mitigate the unseen barriers that we talked about at the beginning. And it really is an important part of leadership development as well. And it's the peer learning and dialogue that you get on an MBA is fairly unique. And have you noticed any? Oh, sorry, go on.
I like to add one thing, and that is the fact that the cohort size was appropriate, and I think it's one of the best thing about Newcastle University MBA program is the size of the cohort. It is always kept very concise, and because of that we always had like a one-on-one relationship with our professors, and they were always very easily accessible, and whenever we had any doubts or any queries we were able to go to them and ask for them, and I think everybody knew everybody. And so I think that was one of the best things. And I had like offers from different universities as well, but the main thing where Newcastle University stood out was this aspect, because obviously, as I said, there are these barriers, and when there is like a large cohort you get lost somewhere, and then all these aspects of self-awareness and actualization, they get lost and you remain the same. And I think this is where Newcastle MBA helped me to grow, because I had that opportunity and I had that environment.
That's a really good point, actually, and you can see that translated into the business world as well. When we think about, agile approaches to working and creating tiger teams of an optimum number, so that you can establish and sustain those very human relationships, which is so important in education and business, isn't it? It's a really good point. All right, I think that's it. So if anyone has any questions for Aditi or myself.
Yeah, please feel free to write it in the chat box. But while we wait, I was just wondering if you could answer one of my questions. I was just wondering, how can we make stepping out of your comfort zone less scary? It's a problem that a lot of women have. And what are some tips that you guys can give us?
Aditi, what helped you kind of overcome that fear of being able to present? And you said you had that fear before coming onto the MBA. What do you think helped with that?
I think it's like the different kind of opportunities you get, and you start off with something like, obviously, for us it was like for every module we had like a 50-50 or 30-40 kind of a division. So half was presentation and half was assessment. So initially what started off as, I have to do this to gain some marks, eventually turned into something that I liked, and I thought that yes, this is something that I'm comfortable in. So you need to do that thing, to overcome that fear. So because we were asked to do it, and because we had the opportunity and that platform to practice it, I think that's what mitigated that fear in me. And along with that, we had like many resources in terms of, there were many external people who came and who taught us how to make PPTs, how to present like perfectly. And we had that demo sessions and mock sessions where we were given the opportunity to speak. And even during the lectures as well, we used to have these group discussions where we were made to talk and give these small presentation in a small group. And I think it's these little things that added up to me being able to eradicate whatever fear and whatever reservations I had. Yes.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I was also wondering, what do you think is the number one challenge that women face, and why do you think that women are held back in their careers and in their personal lives, and how can we help them grow?
Well, I'll give a quick answer to this, and then Aditi can follow up as well. In some respects, it's very similar to working in academia, actually. I often feel it's the variety of things and the variety of roles that we perform. That's what is the kind of single standout thing for me. So I'm, a single mum. I'm also a director of a full-time program at a Russell Group university. I also have to produce and publish research outputs. I also participate in multiple sports teams. I, who have friends that I want to maintain friendships with, and so I think and that caring role, and it's true, we can't get away from it. It's still the case that women tend to be the carers in families, and so I think it's the variety of tasks and roles that we have to perform that can be the difficult challenge.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much. It has been a huge pleasure having you guys with us. I hope we can see you again next year as well, because you guys have been truly amazing. Also, a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of the presenters as well. Thank you for joining us. For the attendees, it is time to move on to the next part of the interactive event. So in a couple of minutes, if I invite you to join the third webinar that we will be having, just click join now on your screen, where you will gain insight from 3 more North American schools and enjoy 2 very interesting keynote speakers as well. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next webinar.